I am here today with Coach Noel Dean. Currently at Chelsea Athletics, the head coach football team, Chelsea High School in Michigan. Coach Dean is a hallowed name in Michigan athletics between a football legacy, a wrestling legacy. Of course, has been inducted into the Michigan Football Coaches Hall of Fame as a Hall of Fame football coach. I've had an opportunity to see a little bit about your program and what you do, but really excited to talk to you about, get in deep about what all this is to you and how you've gotten to where you are and what drives your success, both in coaching football, in coaching young people, in developing young people, and as an educator. So really excited to have you here, Coach, and appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you too, Chris. I'm nervous, but
Nervous.
excited. Yeah, I don't like. I don't claim to be an expert. I just know all the things that I've ever done work for me. You know, and that's important too. Because
that's what we want to know.
Yeah, right. So,
and
then whatever people can take from that and apply to whatever they do, that's great too, right? But I have some thoughts, but it's been a good run to this point, and my wife and I are excited for the next 20 years. So.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about your run. So, I gave a high level there, but go ahead just for a minute. Depart from your normal humility. What's the stats on your career, and how did you get to become a Hall of Fame football coach?
Around a lot of people that were really good people. I think that I'm a solutions guy, not a problem guy. So those things have really served me well in this business. I started when I was 22 years old as a head coach. I wanted the job. I needed to take the coaching job to get the teaching job so that I could ask the girl to marry me. So that was kind of how that worked. And then we were so bad that I couldn't leave that.
Where was that?
That was Burton Bendel, which is a little southeastern corner of Flint.
Okay.
Smallest geographical district in the state of Michigan.
Were you a football player?
I was. I played in high school. My family, my dad was my grandfather, my dad. I mean, it was their sports, you know, and it was their sport, and so we did that. And I had a family full of brothers that played, and really enjoyed all of that. And my dad was an educator too, so he was a superintendent of schools.
Interesting.
I enjoyed the relationship I had with my dad. I was a middle child of a large family of 6, and I connected with him by going to my older siblings' games, riding along with him, and then so all of that was a big piece of formative. And then I wrestled in college my first year. I was a much better wrestler than a football player,
Really?
but I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't taught to love wrestling the way I loved football. And so I had a knee injury. I had an ACL tear right before the Mid-American Championships my freshman year. And my dad was a Division III football player. My grandfather was. My dad played with Jimmy Northrup at Alma College. And we would go to Tiger games and meet Jimmy, and then early on in my young childhood, and then go to Alma College games. And I had an uncle that played for Central Michigan. And so all of that, I wanted to play college football, and I went to Olivet College. Olivet College was coming off an 0-9 season. They had a new coach and had terrible facilities. So I assumed I could play there, right? Those were all those mindsets of a 19-year-old. I just wanted to play. Yeah. And I went to a small private college, and it was near where my wife went to school, which was important to me. And then it just one thing led to another. I lost my dad right after my first year of playing college football, and then my faith is important to me, and I believe that sometimes you're put in places before you know why you're put there. But I think being at a small school made a huge difference in me surviving all of that. And then that kind of became the impetus. I wanted to have the same relationships with children, my own children that I didn't even have yet, right? But that I had with my father, and I wanted to build a life around that. And so, and my goal was to build stuff and that they would be proud to be a part of, long before they ever arrived. And my wife and I jumped into that. So I got my teaching degree. I was a chemistry major and social studies and phys ed minor. My dad told me I needed to be a science major to get the job. And I did that. And then eventually we got the job at Burton Bendel High School. We were there for 5 years. We had 14 kids show up the first year, and I had 13 on my first varsity roster. And then by my 5th year, we went to the state semifinals, and we had 60% of the boys played football.
Wow.
We made it into something beyond football.
You used a word that I keyed in on when you said I wanted to build. You build. You build programs. I think that's what you're known for. So talk about how do you build? What made your players want to get involved? What is it to take a football program from one place to another place?
Time and trust and time. And then, we weren't very good at football at Burton Bendel early on, so I couldn't come out if you're winning, if you play to win, or if you are, whatever you identify as the reason, then you better be doing that, and you better be able to be judged on that. And so I learned that early on, and we couldn't talk about winning at Burton Bendel. So we got into the community service side of stuff and academic side of stuff. Come play football, and we'll have these experiences. And then eventually that relationship stuff transformed the team, and we could demand some. I mean, demand's a strong word, but then we could get them into the weight room, and then we could have those experiences. And then as that grew, we would just win. And so those things were important because we were talking about academic success. We were talking about community service. We were talking about relationships. And then, we just began to win. And then the winning took care of itself. And then once we did that, more and more kids wanted to be part of the program, and they wanted to be involved with this, and they wanted to be part of that relationship, of that positive. And so my 5th year there, kind of before the internet, I was looking for a town to raise my children in, and at the time Burton Bendel wasn't that place, and we had just my last year there. My oldest son Cannon was born. He was 6 months old, and this town called Lowell, Michigan, which is over on the west side of the state. A couple coaches came over and asked me to come and interview for the job, and then we loved the town, and they had a wrestling legacy there that we enjoyed that. And I wanted to do the wrestling with my own children, but try to do it differently than the way it was done with me. And it had nothing to do with my father. He wasn't a wrestling guy. Was more of the coach at the time. And we went there and we started implementing the same philosophies, and we were there 25 years. So, and then.
So when you left the Burton Bendel, what would you have a more winning record?
Yeah, the first 2 years we didn't win a lot of games, but the last 3 years we had winning seasons, and they didn't have a lot of winning seasons. So the first 2 years were just, taking a lot of stray bullets and trying to change culture. And, if you're going to be a part of this, this is how it looks. I've never really had a lot of rules. I'm not a rules guy. I'm more of a relationship guy. It's kind of interesting because I'm sure we'll talk about my kids here later, but I never had rules, and I don't even have rules now. I've never believed in a rule book. I've believed in a what did you think was going to happen kind of guy, or what was the goal? What were we trying to accomplish? Yeah. And I ask kids that question all the time and make them be reflective, because rules just become adversarial And, so we didn't have a lot of rules. We just had, like, what did we think was going to happen if we did this? And what was the end game? What's the goal? What's the exit strategy? All of those questions, putting it back on the kid or the parents even, what were you trying to accomplish when you told your son this or what have you, It's less adversarial that way, and people can be more reflective. So we got out to the state semifinals my last 5th year there, and which was a big run.
Went from a third of a squad with no wins to the state semifinals.
Yeah,
that's wild.
Took 5 years, but it took a lot of time and took
really
a lot of
not
energy.
That long though, actually, to change a culture from nothing to a winning, proactive culture.
Yeah, and it just time and trust, man.
Have you ever analyzed why? Why do people follow you? Why do people follow? Because if you look at the role of a coach, I'm sure that there's an aspect of technical football, right? Calling the right plays, some of the strategy, some of the fundamentals, even at the high school level, teaching the throwing and catching and hitting and stuff. But you could be the best technical whatever. The people, the players, the young men and women that have to follow the coaches. Why? Why you? You ever think about it?
I think that's a tough question to answer because it's a
very hard question.
It's very self.
And this is the opportunity to just be self-reflective, not because
Right.
the fact of the matter is they follow you, they respect you. I've seen it. I've been in your practices. I've been at your games. I've been in your weight room. I can see the way that people interact with you. I can see the positive impact that you have on kids because they're respectful. They're holding themselves high. They are confident in that moment, at least with you. Self-assured. The qualities that you want to be imparting. So you're doing that. I'll take that off your plate. You don't have to say that about yourself. But when you think about getting people to, because you're asking them to do stuff that hurts, that's hard, wake up early, play in the mud, in the rain, whatever. Why do they? Because they wouldn't do that for every single person. That's what makes a coach.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think, again, it's a relationship deal, right? So, and you have to do what you ask them to do. You can't say, you guys go over there and do this while I stand over here. And then you have to live your life in that same, I think that coaches and, people in leadership roles, they give up a certain level of autonomy when they choose to be a part of something that's bigger than them. They don't have the luxury to say, I'm going to be over here doing this, but then I'm going to be out front of everybody. And then I think the biggest key I would say is transactional relationships, right? I've been involved in a lot of transactional relationships and they don't feel good. And for me to get your attention or for me to be able to be, I need to do this or do that or be, and I learned a long time ago, I think even being in a family of 6 or 7 kids, the relationships is the most important piece. And so like in coaching, I have to spend time with that middle group and even the bottom group because that's the difference makers in your team. I had a great kid, he's a long time before you, he's probably your age, Mark Catlin, was a fantastic football player, best high school football player I ever coached.
Really?
And we used to have 2 8th grade teams when I was at Lowell. We built it out to 2, and I put him on one team and the next 11 kids on the other 8th grade team. And Mark Catlin's team went undefeated and the other one went 500. So, and then he helped build us to our first state championship. Wow. He kind of helped us get through over the top and back in 2002. But I only bring him into the conversation is we all feel good about coaching Mark Catlin. And we all want to be around him, but Mark Catlin isn't going to be It's going to be the offensive guard, the defensive tackle, the kid that maybe hasn't grown into his body that we need to keep engaged and keep around.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people miss the boat on that. I always hear one of the things I always got a kick out of coaches is we don't have the talent this year, or they didn't follow the game plan.
Which you have no control over at the high school level anyway.
Right, but at the same time, too, what are you saying about your role? Like if
It doesn't matter. It's all about that.
Right. So the coach, we don't even need coaches then, right? I mean, like what impact can I have on the outcome and the building out of a system? Is we don't have the talent, or this, or they didn't follow the game plan. But when we do win, they do follow the game plan. I always got a kick out of that too. It's like I won the game with my game plan. The kids, so. If you're successful, you have good people around you. And I think the relationships is the key. Are you going to be there every day? Are you going to be around every day?
Yeah.
I came here to Chelsea. One of the roles I wanted was to be a lunchroom guy. And so
That's cool.
every day I'm mopping the lunchroom tables and in the lunchroom talking to kids and being with kids.
That's incredible.
Yeah, but it's
Wow.
I knew that I needed to be there, right? I needed to be in that environment, in that arena.
Wow.
And I'm okay with it.
And just to be clear, you're already in the Hall of Fame. You have nothing to prove to anybody at this point.
I have,
So you're
well,
doing
but
this-
to see, I have something to prove to the kids.
Yeah.
And because you have to do that every year.
That's awesome.
You can't rely on,
Yeah.
because it's a new group of kids who deserve, in my mind, they deserve the same attention every year. And that was always my deal. I only have, and this is my parenting, and my oldest pretty well, but I only have one opportunity to have that 16-year-old moment with that child.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do anything I can do to make sure it's the best. And
Wow.
because I'm not going to get that moment with that 16-year-old boy back again.
Yep.
And so, and that can take you to some dark places too. Like, because I'm probably the hardest on myself of missing those moments. I've never really talked to my children about it. It'd be interesting to hear them, but I have, and some of that, Chris, comes from the loss of my father. I'm sure that drives me. Like, you know what I mean? And I don't know how healthy that is either, right? But at the same time, I understand it.
I could tell you that it's natural, though, because I think every parent could easily let themselves go there and say, I should have done this, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Because I do know, at least your oldest, I mean, you're, I don't think they harbor any ill will.
No.
It's quite the opposite. I think you're quite revered in your children's eyes. But.
Yeah, I just, it's interesting because we just were out at, as you know, all three of my sons wrestled at Harvard, and we just went out to our youngest senior night weekend. My wife and I just flew out there, and we walked the campus. We hadn't been there because of COVID and some other things, and then my youngest was sick for a year, and we were looking at different spots because it'd been 12 years we'd been on that campus.
Oh, wow.
With Cannon being
Yeah,
out
really.
there.
Jeez.
And Cannon was a 10th grade boy, and there were some things going on there with some other older kids in the school. And Cannon was a fantastic student. I mean, we're very fortunate. And I think we did a lot of things right, but I don't think that, we didn't waste his academic abilities, but we certainly weren't the reason why they were what they were, right? And I remember, I didn't want to waste that.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were and he was really struggling. So him and I flew out. My wife and I, we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, we were struggling with 4 kids, all that. And we flew 24-hour round trip, him and I took him to Harvard to watch him wrestle Army. And not knowing what that was at the time, but I wanted him to understand it. I wanted him to understand that it's bigger than Lowell. Yeah. Right? Lowell is where we're doing this, but your life is bigger than Lowell. And I would say that about any community, right? With your children, right? Yep. So that's not an indictment on Lowell, but your life is bigger than this place. Sure. And that little moment led to all of this with our other children. And I think about all of those, like, so that's where I get so deep on those little moments. Like, you know, I even bringing my brother David to Lowell, helping get him there. And I think of the success the wrestling program has had was just getting David there, because he organized it in a way and brought all of these kids that wrestled for him in college in, and it got out of their way. And now they've just finished winning their 12th state title in a row. And
Lowell's well known for their program.
So I think that every moment has manifests bigger moments, good and bad. So if you try to be around the best people you can be and surround yourself with really good people and try to do the things for the right reasons, you know.
And you had mentioned, you had brought up a word before, probably a couple times, culture.
Yeah.
You know, building a culture. What does that mean to you? Or how do you do it?
I try not to use that word as much anymore, because, you know, people will grab these words and they run them into the ground.
It's true, but that one's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good
but
word.
a lot of people that use it don't have any idea what a good culture is.
that's fair.
They just say it, you know, and
fair.
I
Which would be the opposite of a good culture.
right. They
Using
just say it.
buzzwords.
If I say culture, we must have it. If I say, you know, hard work, you know, grit, the word grit drives me nuts anymore, because it's like, you know, I don't know. But when we can do things for other people without expecting anything in return, just knowing that it'll happen, something good will come from this, that to me is the best culture you can have. And it's not just like the head coach, it's the assistant coaches, and it's the head coach for the assistant coaches, assistant coach for the head coach, the assistant coaches for players, players for parents, parents for players, parents for coaches, coaches for parents. All of those, just trusting it and knowing that this experience is going to be the greatest experience that we can give our kids if we all just trust it.
Yeah.
And I have a saying that I'll say, like at my parent meetings, or, you know, I have nephews. My nephews are really good wrestlers. My brothers, David gave his kids better genetics than I did. So, but Gabe Dean was a two-time NCAA champ, was a heck of a quarterback for me. He won a national title at Cornell, and he took us to 3 state finals as the starting quarterback at Lowell. And I always, like, how many people are going to come back to the Gabe Dean individual national championship reunion? Not a lot. But if Cornell would have won the NCAA championship as a program, how many people would have come back to that?
Yeah.
And there would have been a lot, right? And so, and I say that because Gabe understands that, and he knows, you know, what he did was an amazing accomplishment, and we're all so really proud of him. But there's only so many people that can really get behind that, right, with him. But and the same goes with like stats. Nobody cares who the leading rusher was. I don't have those conversations with kids in my class.
Yep.
We talk about the moments. We talk about Coach Bob Hayes. We talk about you know, the games we won and lost, and, you know, nobody says, oh, you threw for 240 yards, and nobody remembers that stuff. We just remember the locker room, we remember the trips, we remember the experiences. And I think that's so true in anything we do in life, right? I mean, our kids, you know, when they were young, I would take them to father-son wrestling camps. And we started off with one-day deals, and we would then go to an amusement park.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I wrestled for briefly in high school. I got thrown into one of those camps where you just sit in there and you get your butt kicked for like 8 hours a day for 5 days in a row, and I quit right after that.
Yeah.
It just destroyed it for me. Like you said, did not teach you to love it. And I was in 8th grade. I was not of a mental state to want to do that at that point. And it was like some coach recommended it, and it destroyed it for me. And I think it was my idea. I'm sure I begged to go to it because I thought it sounded cool, but it ruined it for me, and I regret that, because then I quit for 2 years. I came back, but in high school, 2 years, missing 2 years of a wrestling career it's a decade. So I was never any good after that, which was a bummer. But that's I hate to say, I think that's only getting more and more prevalent too in athletics.
Yeah, I think that parents have to be very careful, and the business side of it is driving that anxiety for parents. Like, I'm not doing
interesting.
enough. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. Oh my goodness. And but the people that are running those organizations are driving that mindset because the positive feedback loop for them is your hard-earned cash, right? And that's the reality of that,
Yeah.
right? Like, who's giving you that information, right?
Yeah.
And and I've never wanted that. We kind of went through it in soccer with our daughter because there was just no easy way to get in and get out. But wrestling was a great sport for that because we could get in and get out. We didn't need
Yeah,
a
that's true.
we didn't really need a team with youth
I
wrestling.
don't think
although
there's
we,
really, is there even travel wrestling? I've never even.
there is.
Is
yeah.
there nowadays?
Yeah, we can go to tournaments all over the place.
guess you could.
But we would, we would gear up for a big tournament, and then
Yeah.
we'd go to smaller ones and win them, and then
Yeah.
we'd go. My kids need to be humbled. As they grew, you kind of ratchet it up, and then you bring it back down. And it's like anything else, right? You can. It's kind of going back to the Burton Bendel thing. When it becomes something that they want to do, then the more success we have, I guess, Chris, is the idea is, I've said this, the more success our kids have, whether it's my football program, whether it's my own children, the more success they have, the more I can demand from them, not for them. And there's a big difference because you see a lot of coaches will say, oh, we won this, we deserve this. No, we won this. And if you want to keep being a part of this, you're going to go in your classroom and act a certain way. You're going to, and that's where, in my mind, where the success really becomes strong because you can demand more from kids to be around more successful items. And it's kind of the fish ladder, right?
Yeah.
You kind of, okay, we win a little bit, now we can demand more. Well, that demanding more is going to help us win a little bit more. Now we can demand more and demand more. And then it just it keeps ratcheting up.
Yeah. And by demanding more from them, you're actually doing that for them.
Yes, without question.
Which is something, maybe it's paradoxical, but, it's, and I think, and I don't know why that concept seems so fleeting to so many, but when and I know this from the military days, I mean, all the stuff that you get put through, I mean, it's for you at the end of the day. You have to do it, but you are doing it to make yourself better. And what you end up doing, and that ratchet concept especially, is so pertinent because you do something that you didn't think you could do. And then you're like, well, if I did something I didn't think I could do once, I could probably do something I don't think I could do right now. Yeah. Because I already proved it once. And you prove it, and you prove it, and you prove it, and you prove it. And yet, you have to learn how to fail in that process because you're not going to succeed every time. But as you do that, you are building resilience. That is the definition of mental toughness and mental strength, and that resilience is what you're teaching kids, anybody, by doing that. And that's an incredible thing to hear you say because it's so true, and it's probably part of the reason that they have so much respect for you because you are that catalyst for them to have that learning. And they do it, and maybe they, if they don't know you, maybe they doubt you the first time. But they do it because you told them to, and they just do it. And then they're like, holy cow, I did it.
Yeah.
But you're the catalyst for that.
Well.
And then you gain that respect, and that's a super interesting concept.
Yeah, there's a reason they don't have Hell Week in Navy SEALs the first week you get off the bus.
Yeah, true.
You're building.
A couple weeks
you're building to that, right?
It's true.
I think that there's so much of that from the psychology of that, right? Yeah, and it's also about being vested, right? I mean, the more that you ask of these kids, the more they're vested in your program. Yeah. And we're not talking about lifting weights or running sprints. We're talking about just behavior, attitude, academics, all of that.
Yeah. Well, and because you sort of invited me into the fold a little bit, I saw that your program is many things. It's community service.
Yep.
It's academics.
Yep.
It's philosophy. So football is a it's a great tool to learn about life. It's to learn about dealing with fear, overcoming adversity, and these things. But it's a much bigger thing. That's what you've built.
Yeah, the football is the vehicle towards building men, and I think that we, as a society, certainly that has been put on the back burner. And I think toughness.
agree.
It's okay to be tough. It's okay to be strong. It's okay to be. It's okay to be. All of those things. That men. It's okay to be that.
Yeah.
And you can still be a gentleman, right? You can still be.
Well, the toughest people are gentlemen.
Yeah, right. Because you just need to be in a position where you can weather a storm when that storm comes. And, I always tease the kids is like, they go from, the girls, they eventually want to date a provider. Yeah. And, somebody that can protect them and make them feel loved and cared for. And, those things are important, and your daughter needs to see somebody that can be strong and then how you treat your wife and all of those things. Also very important and how we treat girls here in school. We have those conversations in our meetings, and again, it goes back to like, what are you trying to accomplish?
Sure.
What was the goal when you said this to her, or you put this online, or what did you think her dad was going to think?
Yeah. Well, and being a kid, a young person, is so hard these days.
It is,
unfortunately, relative to when I grew up, even. But it is something where you have to be. You can't ignore the realities, right? Which is you are going to have adversity at some point in your life, even if you have no adversity thus far. To ignore the fact that one day there will be a storm that you're going to have to know how to weather. That is just the truth. 2 is everything you do nowadays is going to be public in some form or fashion, and the way that you are, especially when it relates to the relationships between males and females, is critical that you are respectful and proper and so forth, because it's going to come back to bite you. And you have to. We didn't have to have that conversation maybe as explicitly when I was a kid, but you sort of do now.
Yeah, well, I do. One, there's 2 things. One is I feel bad. Like when I ask, a girl out or something in middle school, like to the dance or something, right? Or whatever, you had to, and you get rejected and all your peers have all that fun on your behalf. Then they get on the bus, they go home, do whatever they do. They come back the next day and everybody's moved on.
Yeah.
It gets worse when the kids leave school now than when it is at school, because of what they do to each other. So what it does inherently puts kids in a position where they don't want to fail. So they just kind of sit on the sidelines all the time. And we're teaching kids inherently to sit on the sidelines and play safe so that you don't, right? So that's number 1.
Wow.
And then the other aspect of that is that they build us cool. Well, that cool doesn't exist, but only in your mind, in your brain. And you get so worried about what your cool is that any chance you take publicly could chip away at your self-perceived coolness that doesn't exist, but only in your own brain. And so stop trying to be cool,
Yeah.
And I always have a lot of fun with like telling the kids I'm going to be cool, I'm the coolest dude, kind of the nerdy old guy now being cool, trying, so that I can kind of, it's almost a sarcastic, like, stop faking it. Stop taking the best picture with the best filter, with the best whatever, and then taking a highlight and putting it out there and pretending like it's like you do that all the time and all of that, because what you're doing is you're building yourself up to a point where you can't even handle in your own mind, you're saying and doing things that are putting you in a position for the negative feedback loop that you're kind of asking for in your own way, because everybody's waiting for that, for that moment, for you to lose your cool so they can come back at you.
And that's really interesting, because I talk about that a lot, actually, and I've analyzed it for myself, really is this whole concept of fear, which is
Yeah, no, you talked about that earlier with my players.
yeah. And
They
I
still
didn't
talk
actually
about it.
realize, even at that time, we didn't sync up, and but we were so on the same page as it relates to the fear of failing, and I talk about the fear knot, like a knot, right? And
Yeah.
it's like it'll knot you up. You'll just do nothing. So there's fight and flight, and everybody always thinks about that as a response to fear, but really freeze is the most common. So you're like, well, I might fail, so I'm just going to do nothing. And that's the worst. That's apathy. And that's when fear wins, is apathy. And it is sad and scary that that's what you're teaching. That's what people are learning because of the fact that you can't just fail gracefully anymore. I mean, you can. That's what people don't realize. And the reality is that people have more respect for people that have guts to try stuff, even if they fail. And maybe they try and make fun of you, but they look cowardly. When I see somebody, berate somebody for failing, I just think that's a coward. And go out and try something and then talk about your success or your failure, sure. But just the whole idea of, talking about somebody else, even if talking about somebody else's success, it's like, okay, well, just go do something and talk about what's your experience. But 10 times worse when all you can do is criticize somebody else that gave it a shot, whatever they did, whether they failed or not. But yeah, that's critical. But you're building that in your program, and I've seen it, and I'll tell you, it was a thrill for me coming. Now I'm also this crippled old guy, and I haven't been around high school athletics for 20 something years. I've been out of the military for much more than a decade. Coming back and being just in that room, just the energy, without anything else, just the energy, that game day,
Yeah.
and even the practice, and seeing guys, and you can see that you've got that pregame anxiety, you've got the nervousness, the excitement, what's about to happen for the next hour and a half. And that is a crazy energy, and the ability to go out on the field is the hardest part of that whole step. It's like, I could pretend I have a stomach ache. I could twist my ankle in the parking lot, anything to not go do this. But once you're on the field, it's like, it's just, you're on now.
Right.
And the whole thing goes away. And that was one of the coolest things I've done recently, is just to be a part of that. You're in it every day, but I can tell you still don't take it for granted. Just watching you and just the excitement that you have, and that you had the same energy, you had that same drive, and that was cool.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm excited about. I'm a lucky person, and I know that. And I think that, like, one of my life lessons, I guess, is that, it's hard to have resentment when you have gratitude, and it's hard to have stress when you're thankful. Mm-hmm. And those two things, like, there are things that I can resent, every day, and I've had my share here of challenges, but I'm very lucky in a lot of ways. I get to live my dream, and I don't have a lot of needs. I just I enjoy what I do and who I do it with.
Shows.
You said something about the injury thing. I think you can see a lot in kids when they're feeling a lot of stress from home or somewhere else with the injury thing. And I early on with my own children established the cutoff with that. Like, is your ankle hurt or is it not? Well, it's hurt. Okay, so then we're not going to go.
Right.
It's not hurt. I said, okay, so if it's not hurt, you're going to go out there on the mat and wrestle, and you're not going to talk about your ankle ever again.
Yeah.
And you can establish that early on, right? Yeah. And I think sometimes, and this is a sad truth, but I would say more than not, I'll give some people some outs. But when a kid does a lot of that or cries a lot or whatever on a wrestling mat or whatever, they're going home to some harder pain than they're feeling in the mat. So they're not doing it for themselves anymore. Right. They're doing it for somebody else. And they need to be able to go home and have a reason why they failed. And I've, in my 30-some years of coaching, it's pretty true most of the time. And I just didn't want to have that in my children. I used to ask a question a lot with other coaches, what made them better? Parent, being a coach, or being a coach, a better parent? And it was just kind of interesting to have those conversations. But
what do you think?
oh, man, I'll tell you, I think that I saw a lot 15 years, 20 years before my kids became teenagers
Right.
of things that I didn't want to have and be a part of with my own children, you know, and holding them accountable, not because I said so, you know, those conversations, you know, like your old man used to be when, you know, back in that was because I'm your dad.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like that. I wanted to, you know, not that was bad. I learned a lot from it, but I learned a lot from just, I learned a lot from really bad coaches in my lifetime and really bad parents.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from really good coaches and really good parents, both sides. And I just, okay, I don't ever want to have that in what I'm doing. I know how that made me feel when I was playing for you or whatever. I don't want to have that.
Yep.
You know, I did all that anxiety. You know, that just, I would have to get on a wrestling mat, and this was coming more from the coach, all from the coach, I guess I'll say it for what it is that I would have to convince myself and trick myself that this match has zero value. Yeah. And then I could wrestle really well. You know? And
that's a really interesting concept there. You could talk a lot about what you just said there.
Yeah. I had to trick myself, and it was the only way I could do it. And then when I got all the way there, I was pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But football, I didn't have that same deal. I could just go out and play. I didn't worry about stuff, you know. And there's a lot to be learned on a lot of it. But even 10th grade, I made the varsity football team and played with my next older brother. Best football year I had because there was no expectation.
Yeah.
And then I was coming back, and I was going to be, in my junior year wasn't as fun. Because you can't expect it to be a multiplier of success. Right? It's not exponential, man.
No.
It's
small, hard-fought gains.
Yes. But when you think, oh, man, my sophomore year, I was awesome. So my junior year, I'm going to be awesome times 10.
30% better.
Yeah. It doesn't work like that, you know? Yeah. And so then you don't, when you have all of that expectation and that mindset, then it has a way of having a negative balance, right? And so
well, you're doing it for the wrong reason too.
Yeah,
you're doing it to meet an expectation.
Right.
If it's your expectation, that's bad. If it's somebody else's expectation, it's worse.
Yeah.
And if that's the goal, you've missed the point within yourself.
And those are the conversations that I have a freshman quarterback that played 7 games for us this year, and he's a pretty talented little kid, little guy, young man.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I got to be. But we're having those conversations, and I've had it with my nephew, who was a 3-year starter for me, a boy by the name of Keith Nickel that was a 3-year starter for me. We're not going to go out and be 10 times better next year. We just need for you to be incrementally better athlete and a better player and no more. But it's not going to be 10 times better because you need him to enjoy that. And so I sit here and I reflect on that. That's stuff that I've learned on my own, I guess, that I try to bring to the table. It won't be
what do you think, what fulfills you? And I don't know if you have a one thing or a few things that you'd say, in my career, I remember this happening or this person or this, instance that was just the most fulfilling thing that I'll never forget as a coach? Do you have something like that?
Well, I have one that always comes back to me. It's like my first year at Bendel, I had a meeting and I had this little boy show up. He's like 13 years old and he had a purple BMX and his name was Derek Baker. And he was going to be a ninth grader. And we were so bad that he had an opportunity, and I started him at quarterback, and he was a 4-year starter for me, the only 4-year starter I had. And I wanted so much for Derek because Derek believed in something he couldn't see. And so you really respect those kinds of kids. You know, it's kind of like Mark Catlin, you know, we never won a state title. So that's why I'll always have the most respect for him because he believed in something he couldn't see. But Derek, you know, inner city, Flint, I mean, you got to picture that. And he had great grades, and we got him into Columbia. He's the first boy to go to an Ivy League school out by you a little bit. And he went there to play. Before he left, I told him not to come home. I said, just go and get yourself situated. And he did. He met a beautiful girl, Melissa. Derek Baker, the touchdown maker. We still talk a lot.
That's awesome.
All the time. Actually, we were just texting the other day. And
Really?
he was getting married to Melissa. And so my wife and I flew out there for the weekend. It was a Memorial Day weekend.
Wow. And
he was getting married in the North Hudson River in this beautiful home that they had. Old mafia, they said it used to be owned by a mafia guy or something, but it had a big courtyard. I mean, picture this kind of a castle up in the woods.
Yeah.
And I'd never met Melissa's family. I never, Derek and I were still close to this day. And my wife and I went to the reception, the wedding. It was a Jewish wedding, so it was a little different because they kind of celebrated on the front end, you know? I mean, it's different than a Catholic wedding.
Okay.
So, and it was the first one I'd been to. And anyways, he introduced me to his father-in-law. And his father-in-law gave me this huge hug. I'd never met this man before in my life. And he just said, he started thanking me. And he says, because I know what you did to bring him here to my daughter.
Wow.
And it was like, it was just so surreal because I could picture Derek talking about our 4 years together and all of those years that he was at Columbia and maybe he wanted to come home and he would call me and I would say, no, you're gonna graduate. You're gonna stay there. And I wasn't at Bendel anymore either. I was at the other side of the state, but this guy was crying and hugging me and thanking me, and I was like, "This is why I do what I do." You know, there was that moment in my life where it was like, "This is pretty awesome." That man, you know,
very cool. So what does he do now?
He went into education. He teaches in the Bronx.
Awesome.
He lives in New Jersey. He's got a little bit of a commute, but he lives and he's got 2 wonderful children and just living his best life. I mean, enjoying his family and.
That's an incredible story, and it speaks to your whole thing. Yeah, whether you know this, whether you've analyzed it, you know, it's. You are everything you talk about is other people, you know, and giving. You've given a lot to other people, and it's got to be one of the big thrills of being in education, being in coaching, is, you know, you've created ripple effects that will transcend huge periods of time, honestly.
Yeah.
Do you think about that? Does that cross your mind, or you just?
I think about like you know, because a lot of people have a lot of like philosophies, and you know, there's a lot of are very cliched, like giving. you get more from giving than you do, whatever. And it's made me really think about like when I've learned the most in my life, is in the giving mode. And I'll give you, like, you don't even realize it when you're doing it. Like, I went to college for 5 years for my undergrad because I transferred and all of that. And I took 3 years of chemistry classes, high-end stuff that I wasn't capable of doing. I kind of figured it out, right? And but my dad said that I had to be a chemistry guy. And then I student taught it.
Oh, wow.
And I learned more in that 8 weeks of student teaching chemistry than I did the previous 3 years from high-level professors, right? So then I take that, and then I jump into the very next fall after being part of football for 15 years of my life and being around football people. I was now a head coach, and I learned more.
Time for a new class.
I learned more in that 15 and then that 15 years in that first year of coaching football than I ever did. So at the time, I didn't think about any of that. But now when I get older and the give back and all of that, you start thinking like just the mindset of a human. If I just seek to give, to teach is giving, to coach is giving, to parent is giving, right? I knew more about my parents when I started having children, I mean, all of that really. Yeah. So it validates it in just your personal life, right? I learned more about chemistry trying to teach it than I ever did trying to take it from a professor.
Yeah.
I guess if you think about it in those terms, if I'm going to take this from a coach, if I'm going to take this from a professor, if I'm going to take this from my parents, yeah, sure. And I know that taking is harsh because you don't think about it in those terms as a kid, but I am taking the knowledge. I am taking all of that. And then you turn around and you start giving it. That's when you start learning the most, right?
It's true. That theme comes up a lot when I have these discussions. It's amazing.
And so one of the things that I've done in my lifetime that my players really learn a lot by coaching youth camps, by going down and reading to kids, by all of that. Wow. You can really look inside of them and as they're trying to read a third grade book to a bunch of third graders and enrapture their attention and they're learning about their own self in that moment.
It's true.
Funny,
I have young kids and I went to read a book and I was nervous.
Yeah.
You take it for granted if you're a teacher, but it's nerve-wracking.
Says the guy that's been deployed to Afghanistan, right?
Been deployed to Afghanistan. I've given, business talks in front of hundreds of people.
Yeah.
But 27, 8-year-olds.
Yeah. No,
it was like a frightening moment. It honestly was.
Yeah. No, it's intense.
And I'm sure it is for them too.
Yeah.
I think it would be for anybody,
right,
unless you're a teacher.
Right.
Honestly.
Well, I think even when you're a teacher, right, especially that first day and all that. I was a classroom teacher for my first 10 to 12 years. I was science and social studies, and then got a little easier because, my natural turf is, phys ed and that. But every year, every time, new kids, new classes, and, you learn a lot teaching about human behavior and, how to greet people, how to talk to people, how to build relationships,
Yeah. Interesting. And one of the things I noticed too, just to round out this whole giving conversation. So when asked about your most fulfilling moments, what you don't say is winning state title, being inducted into the Coaching Hall of Fame. I'm sure that there's an enjoyment to it, or if, what is your, what's your memories like when you think about those things as it relates to a career?
I was in hot pursuit of it, right? When I was a younger coach, I felt like I needed that validation, right? And I wanted to win one, I guess.
And you should.
You should want to win, right? But how are you going to get there is probably more important.
Sure.
I remember waking up the day after we won our first state title with Mark Callan, and it was a big deal. Lowell never had won a state title in football, and we'd won one. big Silver Dome, played a big private school. Brother Rice was always good at everything. And I woke up the next day and I felt so incomplete. And it was like, it really hit me. It's like, there's no change in who I am. This isn't a milestone moment of like going to the other side and all of that. And it made me wanted to do more. You know, it's kind of the impetus of what kicked off the Pink Arrow Foundation and all of the stuff that we did there in Lowell, because I wanted to do more and I wanted to be a better person. If anything, I just wanted to be a better person. And I wanted to be something that my children could be proud of and not have it be transactional, like winning state titles. And that's transactional in a lot of ways, right? So, you know, always asking kids to do things that aren't necessarily anything in it for me is the best way to build a relationship. Like talk, and I always say that at coaches' conferences, and they ask me to speak, is taking a personal interest in driving academic success with kids isn't scoring touchdowns for me. You know what I mean? As a head coach. And so on that level, in some cases, not necessarily at school I'm at now, but in some cases, in most cases, like where I was in Georgia or Burton Bendel, there wasn't a lot of people that took and made it a priority of their academics. And so to have somebody in their life, I had a defining moment about my 10th class reunion, and I won't say the man's name, but really good friend of mine. And when we were younger, it was fun to stay at his house because we could get on our bikes and ride around town, and they had cable TV, and we could watch what we wanted, all of that, right? And I would go out at night and maybe, you know, do some shenanigans. And I said to him at our 10th reunion, I said, you know, I really loved going to your house because we could do all of these things. And he said to me, I liked going to your house because your parents cared where we were and what we were doing.
Oh, that's super interesting.
It is. It was. Because I'd never thought about it like that. Yeah. And it was something that I put into the bank of when I raised my children. Yep. You know, it's okay to ask, and it's okay to, because his was like, going to his place was like a weekend pass, you know?
Right.
But I had that security of going home. Yeah. I wasn't living in that chaos every day. Yeah. And he was drawn to that chaos. And when I think about it, there was a lot of kids that came to our home. Yeah. And would hang out. And my dad was really all about that. Yep. And so I was too. The kids, you know, it changed over the years. Like the phone stops ringing because they just have cell phones and all that. They just, you go down in the basement. We had a walkout basement. And so the kids would come around behind into the house, and they would bring over their flat screens and their their Xboxes. And, you know, it was the joy. And so,
that's cool. That's cool. That it kind of so that what your story about the winning state title, which I think is spot on, and it reminds me. I was just talking with somebody, out at this technology company in New York, and they wanted to hear about Hell Week, and I told them that it doesn't have the happy ending you think. So I told them about the whole 5 days, and then the fifth day. You know it's or whatever Friday. You know it's going to end soon because you've done. You know, it's not a secret that it ends on Friday, and you just don't know when and how and so forth. And so, you know, they start doing this drill, and you're climbing over this sand dune on your belly, and you see the commanding officer Bud's holding this flag, which is the signify that it's over. And it was the worst letdown of my entire life.
Yeah.
The worst, not in a bad way. I wasn't unhappy. But it's this moment that you build up in your mind for years of working out, getting ready for Buds, going to Buds, dealing with the weeks and then the Hell Week and all this stuff. And you've built this thing up And then you just realize, okay, that's like, I still have another 5 months of training followed by a full career. This is the easiest part right here. And I just, another day. Like, I'm going to go to sleep and eat a pizza tonight. That's cool. But other than that, this is just another day. And those are big moments in your life when you, I don't want to say disillusioned, although that's probably the right word, because you have these goals. And I think that's where it becomes transactional. I like that. I've never thought about it in that way, calling it transactional. But anything where there's like a defined, I'm getting this recognition, I'm getting this title, I'm getting this win, I'm getting whatever, it's a transaction. And those are the most shallow, hollow moments in your life. And then it's those other moments where you have a person who in some way or another you had a relationship with, and you gave something to them, or there was a multiple, a collaboration of giving, and it doesn't even have to be a thing. It's not like, oh, he became such and such because of this. It's just he appreciated me, I appreciated him. Those are much more fulfilling in life than those, I made this goal.
Right.
And that's and you have those so frequently in your role as an educator and a coach.
Yeah. Yeah, both ways if you don't keep it in balance, I think
but you get a lot of opportunities for, what I mean is you get a lot of opportunity for the good, for the relationships.
Yeah.
For that fulfillment of a person. We were in each other's lives for some period of time. They went off and did this thing, and you really do. I mean, everybody, especially this high school period of life, it becomes a thing that becomes like ingrained part of your soul, is that those 4 years. There's even research on it.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. And so then as you get older, how much more important it is to provide the best experience, right? Mm-hmm. Because I can't really tell you what went on in my 20s, my 30s. Really. I can't pick out dates, but I can tell you how we did against Chesaning High School in my junior year in the second game of the season. I remember that. Yeah. And even Friday nights, I don't remember the tackles or any of that stuff. I just remember the experiences.
Yeah.
And then like what my parents, the relationships I built with my parents during that window, right? Mm-hmm. So,
that's when you're learning how to build relationships, I think. Yeah. I think I think it's just, I'm not a child psychologist or anything, but you're supposed to be like extremely selfish as a child because you're helpless. And so you have to cry for everything and get it and whatever. And you have to be taught, not to, but that's right. Your instinct. You're supposed to be instinctually selfish. And then it is that time when you're in high school where you have to learn that the world doesn't revolve around you, and that you're going to have to be part of a community and start to learn how to give and be this other thing, and developing relationships, which are usually strained with your parents at that time, or developing, or both probably at the same time, developing relationships with other people, friends and whatever, and dating and all these things. It's just it's a critical point in anybody's life, and you're here as this a bit of a it's the same stability you just talked about that you're providing. I think even if it's not deliberate, but having that, and that's I think another reason why people gravitate.
Yeah,
because you are a stabilizing factor in a very turbulent time of life.
Right. Yeah, I think, and it comes with age, right?
Yeah.
You get better at it, and when you're learning your own lessons, you keep adding to it. Stoic philosophy, some of that goes on, that it makes a lot of sense, when you start really thinking about, our youngest got sick, and made me really dive into some of that. And one of the things that I've really, and I say it a lot to my wife and to my, my adult children now, is he who worries before it's necessary worries more than necessary. And
Yeah.
I kind of yeah, there you go. He who worries more than necessary worries more than necessary, and I remind myself that all the time, and it takes me back to the other two things. If anytime I'm stressed, I start thinking about things I'm thankful for, and the challenge is try to remain stressed because you realize what you're stressing isn't
Yeah.
something to be thankful for, right? Like you know,
Yeah.
I'm thankful for 4 wonderful children. I'm thankful to be able to do the career I love. I'm thankful for my beautiful wife. I'm thankful for plumbing. I'm thankful for heat.
Yeah.
And then all of a
kidding.
sudden you're not stressing over whether or not, the Lions are going to win a playoff game or, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to give examples of that. And then,
Yeah.
and then when you're really disappointed with somebody who harmed you, you take that so personal. And a lot of times they're just inept, whatever that is.
Yeah.
But you resent them, and then you start thinking, man, what am I grateful for? You know, and it's the same with trying to be not worry. You know,
Yep.
I can't control certain aspects. You know, my faith teaches me that too, right? It's like I try to have the answers and try to explain things to me, and it's just me trying to control the situation.
Yeah.
Where if I let go of it,
Yep. There's just so much you can't control.
right?
All you can control is how you react to it.
Yep. And that's the big thing, right? Is that like you're giving a piece of yourself to somebody that doesn't deserve it when you allow them to respond in certain ways. And it goes back to that cool thing, right? If you build that cool thing up, then you got to protect it at all costs in
Yeah.
your mind,
Yep.
which, the internet's undefeated. It just is, man.
That's it.
You can't beat the internet, man. It's like, and who are these people? And they all have a voice,
Yeah.
and they don't all. Not everybody on Twitter doesn't have a master's degree, and all of these things, right? And so
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Coach. It is, it's been awesome to get to know you, and certainly to get to have this conversation. It is not a surprise that people want to follow you, that people gravitate towards your programs, and that inherently, and because you sort of consider that winning and that sort of success as a secondary to the other stuff, that you end up winning and being successful and winning state championships and being inducted in the Hall of Fame, because you're just you're genuine. You've certainly got the leadership qualities that are that emanate, and as a person that agrees with you that we do need to teach toughness. We do need to teach how to be successful in the face of adversity. We do need to be testing people and putting people in the position to fail or succeed and to learn about themselves in the process. A lot of gratitude on my end for what you do. It is your whole career has been dedicated to sacrificing for young people, to giving yourself in the form of educating and coaching and parenting, and it's something I want to thank you for. It's been really great to be a part of, and it really gives a person a lot of energy from the outside to see what you're doing, and it's admirable. So thank you, Coach.
I appreciate you saying all that. You use that word sacrifice. I don't see it. You know what I mean?
Everybody else does.
I get to live a life of luxury with
It's pretty incredible.
the way it is. So I've never not did something I didn't want to do. So
Well, appreciate it. Nonetheless, it is.
except eat Brussels sprouts maybe when I was a kid.
Is there anything you want to say? Anything you want to talk about Chelsea athletics or Chelsea School District or any other?
No,
any other
like
information?
we're really fortunate to be in the position that we are. My wife and I, we came running when this job opened up. we'd spent a lot of years in Lowell, and we love Lowell. I tease my wife all the time that if God forbid I have to have a second marriage, I hope she's a lot like Chelsea, because we loved being here like we did at Lowell, and we're all in. We're
Yeah.
enjoying the relationships and the support and the help. Everything here is done with a lot of class, and
Awesome.
it's fun to be a part of that.
Yeah, it's been great to see, and I'm sure that they appreciate you, because you have built an incredible program in a short period of time, and sky is the limit. And so the best of luck to you with all that.
Thank you.